the desktop streamer.
That part done.
Okay.
Is there a wizard? for
Scan
this?
or
That's
in.
how I do it.
And we're on.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors meeting for Monday, June 17th, 2019. I will call the meeting to order. First item of business is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Jeff has moved, Santos has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we'll receive comments from the public. Any members of the public wishing to comment on an item that is not on our agenda? Seeing none, we'll move right along to item 4. Discussion and possible action to approve claims dated June 17th, 2019 in the amount of $517,939.96.
Move to approve.
Second.
Scott has moved, Jeff has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Number 5 is discussion and possible action authorizing the chair to sign a grant contract and assurance for CAMP grant SFY 2019 in the amount of $8,000 to cover a portion of the overtime expended on methamphetamine specific drug investigations by the Muscatine County Drug Task Force.
I'll move to approve.
Jeff has moved, Doug has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 6, discussion with Mike Nolan of Horizon Architecture. Good morning, sir. You ready to go?
I think so. Yeah, I want a quick shot.
Sure. Then I'll just read out item 6A, which he'll be talking about discussion and possible action to approve change order number 3 to replace bad isolation valves in the geothermal system for $8,050 at the Muscatine County third floor courtroom renovation project.
Good morning. Yeah, so as you have in your packet here, essentially when we were going through the installation of the new or modification of the existing geothermal units in the courtroom and associated areas, there's several branches to the courthouse, and what they found was that the isolation valve that should allow them to shut down that individual branch, do the work on that, evacuate the system, do the work on that, and recharge the system was not isolating properly. So essentially what was happening was when they would close the valve, start to evacuate that system, all of the coolant from the entire courthouse was getting drained down. So we identified that a few months ago, kind of put a pause on the critical action. So a recommendation from Doug's was they're going to have to close the isolation valve, or basically drain down the entire system and then replace that isolation valve, recharge the system, and do that in order to do the work. So this is above and beyond what we would necessarily need to do and beyond the scope of the courtroom project per se, but it's work that needs to be done in order to facilitate the project, and hence the request for the change.
How many valves are we dealing with?
I think it's just the one. What we can do is ask them to look at if it's just a single branch. I haven't looked at it specifically to see where in the system it is. My impression is though it's a branch valve for that single branch. And I don't know if we can get them to diagnose all of the valves or if we need to replace them all. Hopefully with the age of the system, it's just a bad valve and it's not valves across the system.
Well, I would think if we shut it down, we should look at them all while we're doing
Right.
it, right?
All right. Do we-
Well, I'd move to approve.
I would second.
Jeff has moved to approve, Scott has seconded. Any discussion?
Just, what kind of valve is that again?
Excuse me.
I don't know what kind of valve it is.
I don't. My guess is it's probably a ball valve or something along that line, but I can get some more information.
Yeah, I'd like to, at least, I mean, if we can look at it once we remove it and then find out what kind of the other valves are, because if is it a needle valve, the throttle, or is it a butterfly valve where you're seeing flow go through consistently? That'll help us identify what the other valves may be and what potential issues we may need to be, testing the other ones. If it's just the one valve for an isolation, then it may be better to replace it with a gate valve.
Okay.
But I'd like to see at least what they come back with once they find out what the valve is.
Absolutely.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Item 6B, discussion and direction regarding the jail multi-stack additional controls ventilation plan.
So item 6B, this was something from the master plan, was during the summertime, particularly with the multi-stack system, the controls don't have any exterior ventilation, so they're having issues with overheating, which is leading to a little bit of degradation in performance. So the recommendation of the facility master plan was to design essentially a fresh air ventilation system. You'll see in your packet, it's basically a single drawing to install some motor actuated louvers on the thermostat system to where the temperature in that control area increases to above a certain threshold, that would open those louvers and allow fresh air to move through the space to essentially ventilate out some of the hot air. And then when it got, below that threshold, then it would close those louvers again. This should be a fairly inexpensive, relatively project, so below the 50,000 threshold. We're anticipating the cost to be actually somewhere between 8 to 10,000. So our request would be, we'd like to take it, essentially just go to 3 vendors, get competitive bids, not do the full public bid process, but essentially use county approved vendors to get a quote and just get the work executed.
Is this up in that penthouse at the jail?
I believe so. Is it Michael?
Yes, in the penthouse. Yep.
Is that, so that is not temperature or any kind of controls in that pen, it's just a room, basically?
Pretty much. There's a large kind of insulated aluminum enclosure where most of the ventilation air and the filters run through, and then the controls are off to one side of that, so all the air is passing through that area. It's not actually conditioning that area, so yeah, more or less it's a metal box up on top of the roof.
And that we have, sounds like there's significant electronics up there.
Absolutely. It's pretty, if you walk in there, that whole wall has all the racks.
This place has been a problem child for years. I wonder if we should look at that structure and see if that's really what ought to be, electronics don't like hot, they don't like a lot of humidity. They like to be in a pretty stable environment, and I don't know why we'd have them on a roof in a tin box. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It's probably based on the space. It's not necessarily in the wrong place for it. It's just that they set up with the configuration right now with not having any sort of ventilation there. It's probably a mild overheat condition, but it happens frequently enough, particularly when we get into the hot months, that it's degrading the performance of that system to an extent that it's causing problems. So,
This isn't the one we used to run sprinklers on, is it, Sherry? That was a different unit.
That was compressors that we
Yeah.
ran sprinklers on to keep them cooled down.
Okay. All right, so I would move to approve.
Do we need a motion on this one?
No, you just
Oh.
need to give him direction that you're okay with not doing the formal bid process, just 3.
I just want to question, what does that give us an advantage of, just the time to do it versus the cost, or?
yeah, mainly the time. The threshold is 50,000. Anything below that, it doesn't have to go out for formal bid. The county has pre-approved vendors essentially that I've worked with before, and it allows us to, for things that are not of a huge scope, we can easily manage in-house. A lot of times these are things that might potentially be helped or done by maintenance staff even, but this is one I think that has enough complexity to it. We want to go to an HVAC contractor. Just more or less time and complexity of not going through. The other thing it saves the county is the cost on me running a full bid process, all the printing of documents, and all those bits that come along with the full public bid.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Yeah, I think, go ahead on that. And then, item 6C, maintenance and search and rescue facility schematic design update.
All right, and I am frantically trying to get logged in here to see if I can get the drawings up, but it doesn't seem to. We got the first part of the connection. You guys will have in your packets, let me try one more. That's not gonna be there. I was hoping that it would just mirror my screen, but it doesn't seem to want to do that, so let's skip that. So for the maintenance, essentially we've gone through, sit down with the county maintenance personnel, and also with we went through an inventory of the search and rescue materials and function, and gone through basically a full space planning exercise for the project. What we arrived at in the facility master plan, we thought would be somewhere between 4 to 4,500 square feet of floor space for the building. What we've arrived at after going through and figuring out everything that's currently in the search and rescue space, everything that's in the current maintenance space, plus the kind of anticipated needs to consolidate not only the stuff that's in the historic jail, but also things that are down the Washington Street work release facility. We come to about a 5,200 square feet total space. What that is going to entail is going to be for the search and rescue, more or less the storage side. They're going to have the 3 bays that are 12 feet wide, so it's about 36 by 60, with mezzanine above that, and that'll be the full width of the building, so the mezzanine is about a 20 by 60, so about 1,200 square feet storage there, with a single, basically a single accessible restroom and shower facility on that side. That'll be separated from the maintenance, which will have a slightly larger, 2 14-foot bays, 60-foot deep, 1 full pull-through bay. And then on the maintenance side, they'll have full mezzanine storage up above with the mechanical space for most of the building up there as well. So the maintenance will have about a 28 by 20 major storage facility. Spent a lot of time walking through with Oscar, Joel, and Scott, looking through all the facilities. Also off of that garage, we're gonna have basically a designated workshop space, which will have a area for woodworking and an area for light welding. Basically, this minor tasks that are needed to handle on a day-to-day basis. Kind of dedicated tool crib and storage. We've kind of gone through and validated through their workflow that this is the right size space for them. The other portion of the facility is about 1,000 square feet, which includes more or less the general services. The supervisor has an office space. We have a work kind of break room area, more or less a public space. A storage area for cleaning supplies, washer, dryer, things along that line. And then we have accessible restrooms, which will also be basically not cut off, but separatable to be accessed from the garage. So people that are working on the diversion program will have access to more or less the garage space and the restrooms without necessarily having to have access to the rest of the building. There will be a public entrance, so there's space that if there is somebody in the building, that the public will be able to come and essentially access the building. Right now with the current setup, when the historic jail, not that it just really has a whole lot of public service function, but still having a front door I think is important for a county facility. And that's kind of the big picture of what we are looking at there. Overall building construction and schematic work through with the structural engineers, we feel pretty confident that this is going to be a good candidate for essentially a wood truss construction. And on the exterior, we're looking at doing some stone or some brick to kind of tie in with the surrounding buildings, and then probably like a decorative metal panel system. If you're familiar with like an aluminum sandwich panel, and I wish I had the pictures up here. You guys have a little of the look there, but going to tie in a little bit with what you're seeing on the new over on the H&I facility, where they're using some more exterior metal panel cladding, and that's a lower cost option than doing stone and brick over top of the entire building. And we'll also have that building then kind of tie in with the surrounding campus. Configuration, we kind of walk through site plans before. It's going to mainly be, main egress will be onto 5th Street, and then the traffic flow will be from 5th Street down onto Walnut, with the idea of eventually kind of closing off that area to make it more pedestrian friendly between where the current historic jail is and the green space, to get those guys combined, and still preserving the parking lot for the courthouse as is, and still preserving some portion of the parking that's currently being the county is allowing the city to use for their public services building. Overall cost, so we did grow a little bit there. We're projecting a schematic design to be around $1.3 million for the facility. And essentially this is kind of an update to see if we're on the right track. Big picture, we had somewhere probably closer to 1 to 1.1. We originally budgeted with a 4,500 square foot building. These projections for cost are based off of 2019 Q2 cost estimates coming in. So what we have seen is a little bit of escalation. I think with the little bit of escalation in cost and then the expansion of the building footprint to be probably 25% more than what we originally had anticipated, I think we're right in line with where the budget needs to be. Sherry and I have talked about it, and the funds are available. We just wanted to make sure you guys understood that this is a little more than we originally budgeted. But I know there's been some concern that we didn't want to go too small and make sure that we're right sizing the building to meet the space needs. But after the conversations we've had, going through programming, kind of walking through all the facilities, I feel pretty comfortable that this is the right size building.
One of the questions I have on the project, this is really not, more to you, Sherry. Are we putting any dollars in this to deal with the Washington Street facilities then? Because Washington Street, that property down there is in a floodplain. I doubt there's any, I'm not sure we really want anybody down there.
We don't have dollars budgeted in this project to do anything. Are you thinking like possible demo? Or?
My thought is just demoing the whole thing, taking the foundation down and planting grass or something.
What about those guys who wanted to park their ham radio vans there?
They don't have any money.
We
They'd be
have-
looking to us for money.
Right now, we have a little over 1.6 million in our building fund that could be accessed. If you choose to do that, we have dollars.
We haven't talked a
Yeah,
lot
we-
about that space and, you know, I know I talked a little bit with the city when we were talking about the rezoning and I said, you know, cause they have their public works in that area and I said, you know, do you have interest in that property or not? And they're kind of of the same opinion I am. It's right along a Mad Creek, floods frequently. You know, if you watched in our high water events, we didn't have water there, but we were awfully close. And I'm not sure we wanna, as a governmental entity, we wanna encourage anybody doing anything in a floodplain. It's just, maybe it's a nice place for an inner city park, I don't know.
And I have had conversations preliminarily with the city, just as we did the rezoning and talking about the overall project. There is plans that they want to have a trail, basically to make use of that floodway in basically a flexible capacity. And that property, initial conversation with Andrew Bangman said that might actually be a property they would want to acquire. And exactly as you said, to have a portion of the trail run through there, but then have some extended green space. So that's certainly, we do want to continue the conversation with what we do with the green space adjacent to this building. And that, as we talked about earlier on, I think that's a conversation that involves not just the county, well, now we have figured out what we want to do with our space. Then we can kind of expand that conversation out to be a good neighbor with the city, with HNI, and figure out what we can do with that green space to help make that a community amenity.
Yeah. And that's an area in town that could use a little sprucing up, so if we could do something nice in there, I think it'd be well received.
I think you're talking about Washington Street, right?
Yes.
And I think you're talking about the corner of Fifth and Mulberry.
I think we're talking about both of them at the same time, but yes.
Oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I think we're tracking together,
Yeah.
yeah. And Fifth and Mulberry, I think, you know, I heard some of the zoning concerns in the city, and I think that, you know, I think it's this board's intention to do something in keeping with the area. We don't wanna go put in a pole barn per se or anything. We want it to be a nice professional facility that looks like it belongs in the downtown of a city, so.
Absolutely.
And I think that your design is probably, you know, I like the idea of the kind of tying in, kind of like what H&I did there. I think that looks very nice along Second Street.
I have a question in regard to, the overhead door sizes. Are all the door sizes 10 by 10s?
10 by 10 is what we have set right now. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure that's adequate for the type of usage that this is gonna have in regard to width.
Okay.
Myself, it sounds like a lot until you're taking trucks and trailers and what have you through there. And, in my opinion, I don't know if you've got 10 more feet, to the west there to work with, or east, I don't know. But I think the usage of the facility would be much more user-friendly if we could have a facility with 12-foot wide doors. It'd be much more user-friendly. And the 10-foot height doesn't bother me so much, but the width certainly does.
Is the 10-foot height based on the current building's design a restriction, or is that just kind of a door you picked?
I think it's obviously more than a standard commercial door, but what we looked at with all the vehicles that we have at this point, 10 feet would be ample clearance, so.
But to your point, Jeff, in my mind, the ideal situation would be 12 by 12 doors.
Yeah,
That'd be the ideal situation. I don't know if you've got 12 foot up or not to be able to work with. If you do have, I certainly would put 12-foot high doors in it. And I would certainly look at 12-foot wide doors on a facility like this, because the amount of, the usage of the building is to enter and exit equipment every day with it. So let's make it user-friendly. That's my opinion.
yeah.
Absolutely, I mean, if,
Yeah.
again, I would come back to if we were looking at doing extra space, as long as you're comfortable with the budget and it works, I just, it's wanted to at this point, just to make aware that we're a little bit over where we started, so.
I understand, but my position on it is, if the dollars aren't there for something that works better, let's take it to where we can come up with a few more dollars and make it user-friendly for the entire length of the building. It would be my opinion.
Yeah, and that was, my concern with it too is, like, I don't know, like the command trailer or truck or whatever it is, sometimes those things get a little tall, I know. I have 10-foot doors in my building, I wish I had 12s.
Oh, absolutely.
10 foot high, I got 14 wide, but I wish I had 12s, and I'm backing trailers in and out all the time, and it just gives you a little extra room, it makes a big difference.
Absolutely,
Especially if the Fifth Street will be a little, because they're coming off Fifth, right?
yes.
And with that traffic, that'll be a bit of a challenge to get, because they're probably, and some of that search and rescue stuff's fairly long too, isn't it?
With the boat and the full rigs, absolutely.
You'll have substantially less maintenance on your door guides and edging substantially less if you add a couple more feet, I can assure you that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we could absolutely look, and sure, we will put the 12 by 12, resize the building appropriately. And there is room to grow with this, and whether we decide to go west or east just a little bit, what we're trying to do is as much as possible align with the existing pavement. We will be going a little farther over, potentially into that geofield. However, everything's 6 feet down, so with the shallow foundation system we're looking at, we're not gonna be into any conflict. So I don't see a site limitation to going larger. So yeah, I think we'll proceed with design. We'll make modifications to go to 12-foot doors, and I'm sure nobody will complain at the extra space inside.
Right.
Absolutely, and yeah, we'll proceed in that direction. So that's great feedback.
Yeah. No one's gonna be happy with 10 by 10s, I can assure you.
They can just blame me.
Join the crowd, right?
I got one last question for Mike. I like a lot of the LED stuff that you're choosing through. Is there any energy efficiency savings that we may be looking at as far as rebates when you look at some of these windows or any insulations or values of things like that, especially the boiler system that you're putting in? Is there anything like that that eventually we could put in for, or do you put that in after you've already installed it?
We can always ask. I would say that in a project of this size, it's probably not gonna be a hugely significant savings as far as rebates, but we'll certainly explore that. The other challenge can be sometimes as a public entity, you don't necessarily get access to those rebates. But we will, I'll work with our mechanical, electrical engineers to see what we're.
Yeah, I mean, I know we do, they're available in the city. I
Yeah,
know that they
okay.
do get them through a lot of the placements and energy, saving projects that they put in as well too, so. I
Absolutely.
was just wondering if that would be something that would be of value, and sometimes there's even grants available through the state if you make it like a, LEE something savings as far as.
LEED.
LEED, I
LEED
think
certified.
energy certified type building as well. There's also potentials for state grants for some of those as well too.
Certainly, I could take a look at that if you were interested in pursuing something like a.
I don't know
LEED
how
or-
much, I just
yeah.
saw how thick the insulation was and how much you were putting in as far as some of those things. It just made me think about how far are we away from something like that, if there was any value and potential
Do you,
savings on
Mike, I
that.
don't wanna hold you to this, but off the top of your head, if you seek like a LEED certification, what kind of cost does that add? Do you have any, are there any numbers they throw out, or?
Well, so this is in lead projects I've been involved with in the past. And the one cost would probably, depending on what level of certification you're going for. So if you're going for a LEED silver, which was a kind of a, there's LEED certified, silver, gold, and platinum, the last time I looked at it. And silver is, I would say that we are designed more or less to a silver standard. So if it would be something worthwhile for the county to have, that plaque and to have that to be a leader and show that that's happening, that's certainly something we could go for. There is gonna be additional consultation, basically for my cost of preparation of materials and record keeping. There is work as we're working with the contractor, they have to keep track of a lot of paperwork, so my guess is probably somewhere $15,000 to $20,000 additional to get this building to that level, basically to get to a silver certification. Now, if you want to go for gold or for platinum, then we're probably looking at, my guess is probably then increasing probably 15 to 20% overall in the cost of the building. just to get the additional type of items that we would need to get to that level, because then you're starting to look at things like gray water recycling, not necessarily bad things to look at necessarily, but is that the best use of the facility? I would say if you wanted to pursue LEED certification, then I would certainly scratch out an elite silver checklist and see where we are and see how close we are to that, and then maybe make a recommendation on that. That would allow you to basically say, hey, we've got a LEED certified building, and in particular, if there are any state or federal rebates available, it may be worthwhile to look at that. Pursuing the gold or the platinum, I don't know if that would necessarily be the best investment of taxpayers' money for this type of facility.
Yeah, I know a couple of the who is it that built the new convenience quick?
Come and Go?
Come and Go here, and their facilities, I noticed are LEED certified, and I don't know what level they were. I'm guessing silver, because that's, you know, as I've seen the gold and platinum, there's a lot of kind of wild stuff that I don't know would ever pay off, and I don't know if there's a value to the county to do that.
I'd be glad to investigate that for you, though. I think it would be a great thing to be.
I
basically
mean, if
show
you could
some
at least
leadership
look at it.
responsibility. Yeah.
I know there's some grants available up to 200,000, but I think, depends, I think those might be out of federal. I'm looking at the state information and trying to come up with, to see if there's anything. If you, like you said, if you can scratch out some numbers and seeing if there's any value in it, I would definitely be interested at $15,000 to $20,000 to have that plaque over $1.5 million project.
Absolutely. No,
It shows good representation from us and looking at, you know, utilizing the tax dollars in the best way for
Absolutely.
cost savings.
I will never try and talk you out of doing more energy efficient construction.
Good. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, we will proceed. And then this last item, I just want to, just to kind of put out there, is as we're going through the courthouse, we've gone through the attic and kind of inventoried what's there and what can be reused. We had some material that came out of the jury room that's been kind of stockpiled back to the attic again, which may or may not be reused. At some point in the future, we're kind of discussing timing. We may come back and ask if we can take that material and pass it on to a historic salvage area. Right now in the attic, there's a lot of materials that are stored from different renovation projects in the courthouse, most of which we kind of determined are not really going to be able to be reused. The doors are either too narrow or just they're not going to be able to go back into a commercial construction to meet current codes. Just something to think about. I'm not going to make a formal ask today, but in order to kind of help out county maintenance, if we could get that space kind of cleared out and get those materials moved on. We talked to Friends of Historic Preservation in Muscatine, might be one area to be interested, or there's a couple of other organizations around. They could take that material, put it into an area for people doing historic renovation or historic preservation work, might be able to reuse that. Might be doing better than holding up collecting dust in the attic of the courthouse. So. Worthwhile on that. Okay, well, thank you very much. I will let Wolf Construction know that we have the change order approved. We'll get more information on the valves back to you. We will send the ventilation project. We'll get some bids together, and then we'll come back and we'll get that certified. And then we will continue on design. The goal is to hopefully have design documents together and out to bid late July, early August for a start here in the fall. So you will talk sometime probably mid-July, get you some more information back on the energy efficiency standpoint, but then our formal ask will be when we have the project completed and are ready to send that out to bid. So,
Thank you, Mike.
Good.
thank you very much.
All right, next up is item number 7, discussion and possible action to approve an ordinance rezoning approximately 15.92 acres in 76 Township from C2 commercial to R1 residential on the second of 3 readings.
Move to approve.
Second.
Scott has moved, Jeff has seconded. This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Doug? Santos?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Number 8, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the, I'm guessing, June 10th regular meeting.
Yes.
Is what we're looking at instead of the June 3rd.
It is.
Yeah.
I just had a comment on that one. If you read through those minutes, it says that the well-marked blue shield was provided to us on July 1st.
What does it say?
Presentation.
Yeah.
Did I word it wrong?
I think it should be June 3rd, I think is what it should say.
I think she means that they gave a presentation
Oh.
on the renewals that begin
I
July
need to
1st.
insert a word or something, yeah.
Gave a
Okay.
presentation about the July.
Okay,
July
well, it just said
1st.
gave presentation
I'll
on
put
July. It just went
regarding July
Yeah,
1st.
perfect.
I'll change the on to regarding. Sorry.
Nope.
I read through that fast, it made sense to me, but it doesn't make sense on everybody. I'll fix it.
Good otherwise?
Yes.
Alright, do I have a motion?
I'll move as amended.
Jeff has moved as amended to approve.
Second.
Santos is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence, Santos.
Just did follow up on the trash, and I think there was also some questions that had come out from the temporary, or not the temporary, the units that we have over on the south side, over at the transfer station. And I guess the recycling is gonna be going away here as of July, and I know that Doug had sent that email out. And it was just a follow-up that came out in the paper as well too, in regards to saying just the cost for those units are just overwhelmingly going up, and Republic is getting to the point where the city's no longer gonna have those, and they wanted to eventually have us, you saw the email wanting us to take some of those costs, but we're $65,000 a year is not value for us, so. So yeah, the city is no longer gonna be taking those, and those will be gone. So it was just a follow-up that I had on that.
Okay.
So I have.
Jeff?
The only thing I had was, I had a meeting with the levy stakeholders on the 11th to discuss the future of the levy and looking at raising the last 11 miles to the 500-year level.
I did not have any correspondence. Scott?
I as well attended the levy stakeholder meeting, and that was all that I had.
Doug?
I had one road complaint on North Tiffany Road, and I got an email concerning we're using coal ash on the roads. That's all I had.
Okay, no committee meetings? How about you, Scott?
I had no committee either.
Okay. On Friday, the 14th, I had the 7th Judicial District Department of Corrections meeting. We're in okay financial shape. Could always be better, but we're getting more federal prisoners than we expect. And that's about it. Jeff?
No committee reports this week.
And Santos.
I had the executive we lead committee group on Friday, the 14th.
Okay. All right, if I can get back to my agenda. Item number 11 is information from county employees. Anybody? Anybody? Item number 12, administration office. Nancy, what do you have for us?
The first item is discussion possible action to set the county engineer's 1920 salary. Do you want to talk, Scott?
Sure. Santos and myself met with Keith and discussed that salary issue, and through some conversation, we agreed at a 3.25% increase.
Okay.
I'd move to approve.
Jeff has moved to 3.25% increase for the engineer. Is there a second?
Second.
Santos is seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Appreciate the work Keith does for us. Item 12B, discussion and direction regarding community services director candidate selection process.
Yeah, we received 12 applications total, 3 internal, the remaining external. So I'm looking for some direction about how you guys want to proceed with that selection process.
So how many is that total? 12?
12 total.
I think, Jeff, we didn't talk directly, but I think it probably makes sense for Nancy to reduce those to a tranche of finalists, and
Yeah.
and we meet with, what, 2 or 3 of those?
Yeah, my recommendation would be ask Nancy and select staff to review them. They have a good understanding of the operation, the department, and everything that goes on, and they could call the resumes down to a group, a handful. I think 3 would be a good number for the board to consider. They're kind of their top 3 candidates, and then we proceed to an interview process with those. Makes sense to me.
What are you?
I'm good with that. I think it's good.
Okay, terrific.
Okay, my other question then would be whether or not you guys would have any availability later this week to do a special meeting if I can get interviews set up. I can set them up whenever it would work for the board to do that.
I'm open Friday.
I'm fairly flexible.
Would after 5 o'clock work better for you, Doug?
On Friday, anytime.
Anytime? Okay. What about you,
Are
Scott?
you talking Friday?
Friday Friday the
Friday
21st.
morning would be better for me, because I may have to be in court in Rock Island in the afternoon.
I can do Friday morning too.
The only thing I have to get around, Nancy, is Tuesday afternoon at 4, we have magic, and then Thursday we have the must come, but other than that, I could make,
Well, the other option would be I could shoot for next Monday in the afternoon. Would that work?
Fourth,
Yeah, that would be the 24th.
I'm available.
Yeah.
Would that work for you, Scott?
I can make it work.
They canceled that one.
How does next Monday look for you guys in the afternoon?
Next Monday afternoon? 24th.
Yes.
I'm fine.
What time afternoon are you thinking?
I probably would like to start them at 1 and give us an hour per interview, so probably be like 1 to 4.
Yeah, I can move some stuff around if I need to.
Okay. All right, so I will shoot for Monday. And then, wanted to also let you know that, after having just filled our vacancies on the Veterans Affairs Commission, we've had somebody else, one of the other commission members, move out of the county. So I've started the advertising process again to find someone to fill that vacancy. And then, the other thing I wanted to let you know, that typically the board does their performance evaluations of the department heads that report directly to them. Typically, we do that in June. The way this June is working out, I don't see us getting that done and that happening. And reminder, I go on vacation for a couple of weeks in July. So we're probably looking at moving those performance evaluations back to August.
Maybe that's fine.
That should work.
And-
Nancy, one other question. You mentioned the Veterans Affairs vacancy. Do we have any other, I think we have a couple other vacancies. Can you remind me what they are?
With the Board of Supervisors still has a vacancy for, a representative on the compensation board. You guys are allowed 2 reps, and you only have 1 who is a female, so, we can't really completely do gender balance there because different elected officials appoint members, but if the board wants to be gender balanced in their appointments, we would need a male to serve on that. We have multiple openings. We have the Compensation Commission is a 28-person commission. It's 7 reps from 4 different categories. City property owners, county property owners, real estate people, and the other one is bankers or auctioneers. We have multiple vacancies there. We struggle to find enough people to serve on that.
Which commission was that?
That's the Compensation Commission, which is different than the Compensation Board. The Compensation Commission is a 28-member commission. The only time they meet is if there's a condemnation hearing, and then the judge draws from that pool of people to serve. All 28 of them don't serve whenever there's a condemnation hearing. People are just drawn from that pool, but we've struggled for years to have adequate representation there. We're not the only county that struggles with that. Eventually, I would hope that's something the legislature may look at and change kind of the way that's done, because
Do we have any idea, like, in the last couple of years, how many times they've been called?
I don't know that they've ever
I'm
been called
thinking-
in the last several, I don't think they're called very often.
Condemnations are a pretty rare event, so
Right.
this would be more just if it were to ever happen. Okay. And so do we have any, you'd just take we'd consider anybody that basically that.
fell into one of those four categories. And yeah, actually, I was just thinking the other day, that's not something we've typically put on our website. But I think we will put that on our website just kind of as an open invitation. If somebody's looking for a volunteer opportunity and it has an interest, they can contact us and see if
So
we
you
can.
got realtor, property owner,
City property owner, county or rural property owner, realtor, and then the other category is like bankers, auctioneers. And other than that, I think we have everything filled at this time.
Good on zoning and adjustment.
Yes.
Okay, anything else, Nancy?
I don't have anything else.
Anybody else have anything? We are adjourned.